Hi again. Here's more of Taylor Swift and her relationships this time. So, let's first talk about the current sky and some transits. Please remember when I show you the transits, they're not mathematically accurate. And the nerd in me is just, I need to say it. I can't not say it. I'm so passionate about people learning to do this correctly. If you don't want to, that's fine. Just ask me, I'll do it for you. I'm willing. All right, so this is the current sky versus Taylor Swift's chart. And the thing, I've had my eye on several things, but the one that is the loudest, because it just is the fact that she has Pluto right here, beginning to conjunct Venus right here. And mathematically, this transit has not even hit yet. And for those of you a little bit more advanced, I think you understand the depth of what I'm saying. For those of you who don't understand what I just said, Pluto is a planet of transformation and extremes. And when Pluto hits your Venus, you have really intense things happen in your love life. It can be high highs, it can be low lows. It's usually both. And so I don't know if we're going to see that expressed in a public way, and I don't blame this woman if she wants to be private and keep things to herself. There's only so much she can do, right? But this Pluto has not hit Venus yet, and it's a 2-year transit. So we've definitely seen the markers of Pluto coming in and Pluto making its approach, and you can feel it when it's a couple of degrees out. Even if you don't know astrology, you just kind of feel these rumblings of like you need to do things kind of compulsively and you can't explain why, but you have to. That's what it feels like. So sometimes, occasionally, I have people come to me and think that they're going crazy, and it turns out that it's just a Pluto transit. Other times, I have people come to me and think they're crazy, and it's a Neptune transit. These are the two that will drive you up a wall, but Pluto is like compulsive and you can't stop yourself. And Neptune is more of the feeling of, I used to be normal, I used to be able to function in a way that felt normal, and I no longer can, and I need to get my mojo back. I just had Austin Powers flash through my head when I said that. So I had to say it out loud. So that's thing one. Thing two that we have seen the results of, but it's coming back for a little bit more, is Neptune has been trining this Mars. And if you are a woman and you are looking to meet a man, Neptune trining your Mars is a great one for you, because you don't have to do anything. It just happens organically. And trines are great. I love trines. You don't have to think about it. It's just stuff that happened, and it didn't take any effort. And people don't realize even that it's energy working in their favor. So I like trines and sextiles from Neptune, but they're like it. You can almost sleep through them, and things will work out. It's just the frickin' conjunctions and the squares and the oppositions from Neptune that are going to get you every time, because you're just like, what the hell? If we were to go back in time with Taylor's relationship with Joe Alwyn, and I'm embarrassed that I said that sentence like knowledgeably, but honestly, I was following along with some of the energy. And at the time where she was like living in England and nobody saw much from her and heard much from her, and the pandemic was also a factor, she had Neptune squaring her sun, which is very much like a very typical time where you are kind of hidden from the world and people don't see or hear from you very often at all. And so, additionally, the sun is another signifier for men. And I'd said that in my last video, it's Mars and the sun. And so you can, and I'm not saying this is her experience, but you can be in a relationship with someone who's not making you that happy, but you can't quite put your finger on it, and you can kind of fall into, the word I want to say is an abyss, but it's not it's kind of an abyss that makes you somewhat nauseous rather than an abyss that you need to claw your way out of. Like, you feel nauseous and you can't really get out of it. You can't figure out what the issues are, and you feel confused about what you yourself want. So it's usually a time of inaction. When Neptune hits your sun, also, it is a time that people can have poorer health. So you're all, and I do see that a lot. So, but not with her. With her, she seemed to just be in a cabin somewhere. So but the Neptune thing I'm going to come back to. So just remember that it's the, love life stuff happening without you really needing to do anything at all. And then finally, another thing that hasn't hit yet, but you can see it's pretty close, and it will hit in the next couple of months, but it's not as close as it looks because there's just this like little teeny tiny line. Like, this makes it look like it's imminent and now. But remember, with transit math, it's a little bit back from where you think it is. So this is Uranus, and Uranus is a planet of change, usually kind of extreme change. And this is the descendant, this is the relationship line. So typically when you have Uranus going through your 7th house of relationships, you can not, it's hit or miss. Some days you feel really connected to your partner, other days not at all, and you feel really disconnected. And you can also meet a lot of people who are like super different from who you are. A lot of the time when you see Uranus going through the 7th house, you have periods of togetherness and singleness and togetherness and singleness. Uranus is an erratic planet. But if you do have a partner, and I have seen people, plenty of people that this is true for, you stay in that partnership. You just have days where you're with them and days where you're not. So there could be a lot of travel. There could be a sick in-law that requires your significant other's attention. You could have little kids, and obviously when you're attending to your children, you don't have the wherewithal necessarily to be the best partner you can be. Probably neither of you do if they're kids that you share. So some thoughts there about what this could be, but at the same time, it's also going to oppose her Mars, which is her chart ruler. So big changes for her are coming. We've already seen big changes. That's the thing. Like, I'd be exhausted, but I don't have a Scorpio Mars on the ascendant. So, just kind of take that for what it's worth. So let's now talk about Joe Alwyn, someone I really know nothing about aside from that he dated Taylor Swift. This is his chart. And he's a little bit younger than her, and you'll notice that I don't have a birth time, so it's set to 12, and it's his birth location. The 12 o'clock tells us more roughly where the moon is, so it's showing at 0 Cancer. It could be in late Gemini, or it can be further into Cancer, probably just up to 6 degrees here. But since we don't have a birth time, I'm definitely not speaking knowledgeably on that one. The main thing that I want to point out here is that poor Joe Alwyn's Saturn is on Taylor Swift's Venus. So when you meet someone who has, and by the way, her in this, it looks like Venus and Saturn in her chart are next to each other. They're not. You can see that this is at 13. It goes up to 29 degrees, so they're quite separate. You can see the actual little lines here of where things are. But poor Joe Alwyn has Saturn on Taylor Swift's Venus, and people with Saturn on your Venus are the buzzkills of the world. So Venus is stuff that you love, and then the Saturn person, God bless them, unless they're like super mature, they are gonna shit on the stuff that you like unintentionally. And additionally, in her chart, the Saturn is right here, and this is her 3rd house. So that can be someone who like literally restricts your movement, because the 3rd house is the house in which you are, it's the Gemini house. You go places, you do things, you see stuff, you talk about stuff. This is somebody who might not want to talk to you or if you have cool ideas and they're not in the space to hear you, they're like, yeah, neat, and so then you just walk away, and it feels bad for your self-esteem a lot of the time. But a note here, Saturn is binding, as I think I'm just going to keep saying it because you just see it all the time in relationships. Of Saturn, a Saturn person is someone you commit to. And if the Saturn person is mature with their Saturn energy, and now I've said that twice, the reason I'm saying this is Saturn is where the person, the owner of the Saturn, feels insecure. And so if you have a conjunction with someone's Saturn, especially one of your personal planets, which Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars are personal planets, you feel them personally. They're as a Saturn person, that person is expressing very easily their personal energy, and you can feel threatened by it. And so it just you you can get your panties in a twist about what the person with the personal energy is doing, and you can have these reactions like, well, I don't like it, and that's a buzzkill, right? So but the personal planet person often wants to commit to the Saturn person because they can look up, like Saturn is an authoritative figure, so you look up to their authority. You see this again and again and again in all kinds of relationships. It's very common, and as the Saturn person grows up and matures, they get better about understanding, like, okay, this is my insecurity talking, and I'm gonna let this person shine. That's what you want to see. That's what you want to move towards, just them dealing with their insecurities, because you're lighting up their insecurities, and and you're bound to each other. So you can see these long relationships where, you know, Taylor Swift hasn't explicitly said this, but she's made a lot of hints, like, I get it, of that, like, he wouldn't let you go places and do things, and you felt stifled. But then the other thing is that if Joe Alwyn truly has a Cancer moon, which he might, it's 50-50, I have no idea when he was born, except the day. This is speaking to the homebody energy. So it's likely that his moon is somewhere in the neighborhood of her moon, because I talked about the last video, the split that she has in Venus, which is just like stuff that you like, and the moon, which is what you need to feel safe. So good chance that he activated her moon, and also obviously he activated her Venus, but just in different ways. So some of it worked, and some of it was rough. And I think that is probably a pretty good encapsulation based on what we know. And I've made some intuitive leaps here. Also interesting, I mean, he's a Sagittarius sun. And right now, Neptune is squaring that Sagittarius sun. So the thing that happened with her, like, they speak the same language. If he's a Cancer moon, which he doesn't need to be, he could be in late Sagittarius, that's still activating her moon. But they at least speak the same Sagittarian language, right? But right now he has this Neptune transit where he probably feels down, and like everybody is talking smack about him, or no one likes him, or, you know, it tends to be a career low, or when people are saying stuff about you that you don't feel is true. Additionally, he also has Pluto approaching his Saturn, so he could have some career changes or issues with personal authority coming up. That would be a typical reading of that. Anyway, that's that one. Next one, actually I think I have to redo this, so bear with me, Taylor. And deep sigh, okay? Again, I am a TikTok user right now, and so I was watching this thing unfold last summer, and I don't know how I feel about this guy, aside from that doing racist stuff for attention isn't cool. But let's talk about what the appeal might be between these two. I could be wrong, and we do have a rough birth time for this guy, but it's rough. It's 7:30. That's still somewhat of a flat birth time, and you know about my trust issues. So here's the thing, like when I first saw this chart, and I haven't had very much time with this chart at all, I was like, oh, he's an Aries? Oh, he's a Gemini Mars? Like, what? And by the way, Gemini Mars just like says stuff, and then he also has uh, Mercury in Aries, which also just says stuff. And this is called mutual reception. Aries is Mars's sign, and Gemini is Mercury's sign. And when you have, even if they're not quite an aspect, but when you have a callback like this, they just kind of talk to each other. And yeah, that's ridiculous that I just said that about Gemini. Like, didn't mean to. If you got that, like, kind of a joke. But basically, this is somebody who just says shit. And I dated somebody with this mutual reception, so that just like flashed into my head. But he also has, so the Mars is sextile this sun. And when you have this recipe of these two energies together, and these are all personal planets, and then you have something that is an inconjunct, which is a 150-degree aspect to both, which can either happen by transit or in someone else's chart, it creates what's called a yod. And it doesn't quite do it with his chart because these need to be pretty tight aspects. So his Pluto is here in Scorpio. And I realized that I just got super nerdy super fast, so it's okay if you don't understand this. But her Pluto is much closer to an exact aspect with this Mars, and it is closer to an exact aspect with this Sun. So they are causing the combination of their energies is causing a yod. When they are separate, there is no yod, but when they are together, there is a yod. And yods are compulsive. You don't understand what's going on. You're drawn to each other or repelled by each other, but usually both feel powerless over the energy in the situation. It's like, people like to talk about how like fated it is. I'm not going to comment on that, but that was the number one thing that I think happened in this situation. I could be wrong, but that's what I think. Another thing is that this Jupiter in Gemini is in aspect to her Venus, and then he also has Chiron next to her moon, which can mean that she understands his malfunctions, but that can lead to some talking like, no one understands you like I do, so she can kind of like, it's a Beauty and the Beast situation. This being the Beast and this being Beauty. And then I haven't talked much about the fact that Taylor Swift has a 12th house Pluto, because there are entire books written about Pluto, and if you wanted to turn to the 12th house chapter, you could begin to explore what that entails, but it underlines why you would be drawn to someone who's activating your Pluto like this, and really not be able to explain why, because 12th house stuff, generally we cannot explain it. And I'll just kind of leave it there, because I don't want to continue to talk about this too much longer, but I have one more thing to say. Since we do have a rough birth time for him, doing a composite chart is somewhat worth it. And the main thing that I just want to point out is that it puts Pluto pretty close to the midheaven. And a Pluto next to the midheaven composite chart would mean that this is a polarizing, relationship. So, love them or hate them together, that's what this energy would be like. People either really like it or really don't like it, but if they're knowledgeable, they tend to have a strong opinion, and the relationship tends to make a strong impression. Cool. Again, I could keep talking. I will choose not to, so that this video isn't eternal, but this is the problem with being passionate about this stuff, is there's always a lot to say. Okay, here's this one. So, remember what I said about Neptune and its transit to Mars and just meeting someone without really needing to try? Well, look whose Venus is conjunct, meaning right next to in the sky, her Mars. So, at the same time she was having this don't even need to try to meet someone transit, he was having a don't even need to meet, try to meet someone transit. And in her case, it's a man, and in his case, it's a woman. And also, Venus and Mars together, we like to see it. That usually makes for pleasant relationships in a male-female situation. Additionally, for any relationship, having and we don't have a birth time for him, so we're in the neighborhood, but it's probably pretty close. Her sun, his moon. According to traditionalists, it's usually better if it's her moon and his sun, but this is just the ability to speak the same Sagittarian language and have the other person get you without really needing to try. He is, however, a Libra with Mars conjunct his sun. So when he does his ego, it is in a Martian way. And as a football player, I think that fits. Additionally, he has this Jupiter aspecting her Jupiter, which aspects her moon, and I'm going to count it because it, even if it's not something that's right next to her moon, like right next to it, this bodes well for the comfortable Cancerian energy that she would need. However, something I didn't talk about in the video about her chart is that she then has this opposition between her moon and Uranus, which, again, this is where you're like soft and warm and fuzzy, and then Uranus I'm restraining myself not to drop an F-bomb, but Uranus is just like, I see your comfort and I want to obliterate it. And it's her own energy, but he repeats it more closely than her own, which just happens if you're around someone who is close to your age. So, you know, she can also be like the world traveler who doesn't care about jet lag, and but it's just kind of difficult to literally live with people who have moon Uranus aspects, because the moon is about home and living. And then I don't know what this does. Like, it's a repeat of energy, so it's stuff that she's already used to, but it can exacerbate it. Additionally, his Saturn is farther back and it's closer to her Mercury. So again, he can help to concretize some of the creativity, or he can impede it. I have no idea. I don't know them personally. This is just me spitballing. We don't have a birth time for these two, but I want to point out something that is something interesting that has happened here. So he's a Libra and she's a Sagittarius, and you can see what's in the middle of this is Scorpio. Their Plutos are in relatively the same place. They're only a couple of months apart, right? But then when I make a composite chart, so disregard these lines because we don't have a birth time for him, so we don't know actually where any of this is. But what is true is that the relationship, so this is a relationship chart, it's a combination of their two energies, and relationship charts take transits. So they have a Pluto Sun aspect, and that is power couple, period, the end. It's a Plutonian relationship, which they both have Scorpio energy, so they're gonna have an easier time than most people of non-Scorpios. But you're drawn together and you kind of get cemented together unless something breaks you up, in which case God help us all, because Pluto tends to be associated with nuclear functions, so explosions of Sun-Pluto energy are epic. And the conjunction is better than other aspects, because the fusion of these energies together mean that both are identifying with the fact that this is an intense relationship. When you have Sun opposite Pluto, that you take turns. One of you is being the Plutonian, the other one is being the Sun, and they switch off. And then the square can be just friction of, like, the relationship itself gets challenged by a lot of outer aspects. Another thing that's interesting is this Venus Uranus conjunction, so the relationship is okay with sometimes being together, sometimes not. It can be an on and off thing, or it can be a separated by distance, literally thing. So that, which is true right now when I'm making this recording. I don't know whether it'll be true in the future, but it works. This chart works for what it works for. The problems might be later of like if they were to try to live together, they would still be more comfortable having space and distance, which it would be just something to reconcile, especially as Uranus is going through her seventh house by transit. We have no idea what is happening with this guy, but recall that Uranus is also aspecting his Venus now. So they both had a heck of a time, because before Neptune was aspecting these two, before that Pluto was aspecting these two, and that this is a couple of years ago. So it's first Pluto, then Neptune, then Uranus, change, all on the love and relationships front. And so there's more change coming. Do I know what it is? No. Do I suspect I know what it is? Yes. And I'm not going to say it out loud. If you ask me personally, I might tell you. But I have what I think is going to happen in my head. But I like to do these kind of retroactively. If I was talking to one of them, I would definitely be dropping hints left and right. I haven't done that in this video because I'm not talking too much about the future. In fact, at all, because I can see other stuff that's coming that it's gonna make an interesting ride. I'll tell you that much for them. Maybe for us as the public. And I hope the best for everybody, because I don't want to watch something and be like, ooh, like that fits this transit, and that is not what I hoped would happen. So hopefully everything works out the way that it's supposed to, and these two are happy together. If they're not, being in a Sun-Pluto relationship is, by composite obviously, is hard to break up, but we'll see, right? These are some interesting characters, and that is what makes watching from the bleachers fun, just to see what's going on, or what different energies cause when they hit. So that's that for right now. Maybe I'll have more to say in the future. We'll find out. But thanks for watching this one.